Hey everyone, and welcome to our third and final installment of our Grand Canyon Adventure Trilogy. When we last left you, we had just finished sitting in a tent for about 20 hours as we waited out a snowstorm, and the sun had finally come out and dried out all of our gear so that we could continue on. Well, after nearly 24 hours in this spot, first seeking shelter, hiding from the snow, and then drying all of our crap out, we are finally ready to go again.
Yay! After 9 days of hiking in what I consider to be the true Grand Canyon backcountry, we'd finally be trading in the solitude of the lesser-known trails for the amenities of the more established main corridor trails.
We ended up running into more people on this trail than we had seen in the last 10 days combined. This trail was a lot wider and well-maintained. It was really neat to see the trail in front of you and how it would arch around all these curves and everything. It was kind of fun. I was blown away at some of the views that we got.
It's always hard not to fall down because you're looking up at all the beautiful views, and I have to say the South Kaibab Trail is by far my favorite.
Once we got about halfway down the trail, we could see where the bridges crossed the river, and I was so excited to get down there. There are two main bridges that cross the Colorado River to get to the Bright Angel Campground and Phantom Ranch. We finally make it to Bright Angel Campground. The campground is situated along the Bright Angel Creek. I really enjoyed seeing all of the green around it. It's kind of like a little oasis in there with all the trees and plant life that's around the little creek. So we got our tent set up and we got a pretty great little campsite.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Yay! We just got set up down here at Bright Angel, which is like a real campground with bathrooms and, get this, a picnic table. Yay!
We finally get to sit like human beings.
I can't tell you what a luxury a picnic table is after you've been sitting on the ground and cold rocks for 10 days. It's pretty unbelievable. And it's also gorgeous out here.
Sometimes I spoil her.
After we got camp set up, we finally got to go into this little canteen that is at the bottom of the Grand Canyon at Phantom Ranch. And finally, we got to treat ourselves to a long-awaited beer and glass of wine. It was finally time for the moment we had been waiting for.
Steak.
Steak.
That's it. I can't tell you how many times I thought of that steak between day 1 and day 10.
They served this dinner at Phantom Ranch family style, which was actually kind of great because we got to sit at this big table with a whole bunch of other people.
And everyone felt sorry for me because we had been out for 10 days and I had been starving the whole time. So I got everyone's leftovers.
Needless to say, after our bellies full of steak and beer and wine, we slept pretty good that night.
Not too bad.
But remember, no matter how focused on your goal you are, or how hectic life gets, as a wise person in the Parks and Rec department once said, you need to take a moment to treat yourself.
While we're on the topic of treating yourself, we decided that our 11th day would be an actual rest day.
A real one.
Like, theoretically, we would do nothing.
No obligations. Zero.
None.
Zilch.
I have no more words.
I explored the area with my camera while
I went out for an 11-mile run.
Well, we officially have a rest day, and so while Kendrick decided to spend his rest day on a 12-mile run, me and Winston get to go on a little photo date. Although the weather was pretty terrible that day and the sky was super overcast, any day I get to walk around with my camera is a good day. Especially when it's in the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
Any day that I get to run is a good day. Especially when it's in the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
But of course, after a few days, our vacation had to come to an end. We eventually were going to have to climb our way out of this hole.
You know what they say, what goes down must come up.
We had decided to take 2 days to climb out of the canyon.
And we decided to linger around and have coffee and maybe a couple of beers and a glass of wine or two. Don't judge. But then finally, around the crack of noon or so, we decided to hit the trail for the 4.5-mile hike.
And so, after a wonderful rest day, we are beginning to climb out of this little hole. We're about to go over that bridge Right behind us, the Silver Bridge.
Got to walk along the river for a mile or so before kind of venturing off into a side canyon to start our ascent. It's a pretty picturesque part of the trail.
I really enjoyed this part of the hike because, first of all, it wasn't as steep as I thought it was going to be, and second, because we got to rock jump across several little creek crossings, which I always find kind of fun. There's only one area of this hike that was supposed to be really difficult, the Devil's Corkscrew. So I had worked up in my head how hard the Devil's Corkscrew was going to be, but by the time we actually got there, it was really just a bunch of switchbacks, and I was happy to find it wasn't near as difficult as the name made it sound to be.
Plus, when you get to the top of it and you turn around to look back down, it's a pretty cool view. You can see all of the switchbacks you just walked up, and it's just neat to see that and know you just came up it.
The only downside to this trail is all the mule crap you have to avoid.
There's a lot of mule traffic on the two main trails on the south rim, and it's really easy to curse at all of the mule droppings and mule urine along the trail. But if you're like us and you enjoyed a steak or a beer or a glass of wine, you don't really have any room to complain because everything's brought down by mules.
So we reached the spot we were going to stop for the night and set up camp. And as much as I didn't want to hike even further, there was a 3-mile hike out to a really beautiful vista called Plateau Point.
It was actually kind of cold at our campsite, so I was pretty eager to get moving again. I've seen a lot of good views in the Grand Canyon, and Plateau Point is probably one of my favorites. Plateau Point just kind of stood out above all of the rest.
They say if you are extremely lucky, you can also see one of the endangered California condors. We were treated to a very fine specimen gliding circles around the canyon in front of us. And as we walked back to camp that night, it was the last sunset we were going to see on our trip, and it was probably one of the most beautiful sunsets we saw too.
It was really good to end on a sunset like the one we had.
But of course, the canyon couldn't kick us out on our last night without snowing on us one more time. Our last evening was freezing. It's our very last night of the trip. Night number 12. Are you excited to be done?
No, I'd rather stay down here for another 12 days.
Unfortunately, real life calls us back to the surface. Good night.
Good night.
There are several kinds of snow. There is the cold, blizzardy, hurt your face kind of snow. But then there's also another kind of snow that's very soft and peaceful, and it makes you just think of a winter wonderland. And that's what we got on our hike out the last day. We're headed up to the rim, which you can see behind us is covered in snow. It's going to be a cold hike, but we're going to get up there and get a hot shower.
And luckily the hike's all uphill, so should warm us up pretty quick. Higher up you went, the less you could see whenever you look back behind you. But it was still calm and peaceful. You can see way down there some white roofs. That's where we started. And you can see right up there, I don't know, maybe 500 feet where we're going.
The views were amazing, and I was actually quite enjoying the snow. But the higher and higher we got, the colder and more snow there was.
The first time I ever came here with snow. Completely different world. Pretty awesome. Mandy on the home stretch.
We made it alive. So when we finally reached the top, we were greeted with a pretty vicious, just cold wind that went right to the bone. We made it! With our 3-mile hike yesterday, we just hiked 85 miles, which is my best hike ever. So I'm pretty stoked, and if there's one thing I can say about being in the canyon for 2 weeks, it's that we need a shower.
Oh yeah.
I was freezing at that point, and we still had to walk from the trailhead to the car.
It was cold and it was windy.
And then we finally got back and saw Rocky in the parking lot. Home sweet home, waiting patiently for us. We jumped in the car and turned the heater on and warmed up our hands because they were freezing.
When we finally got back to the car after 13 days of hiking in the Grand Canyon, I couldn't help but feel proud of Mandy for everything that she did. She had her really bad blisters that she just kind of pushed through the pain and was able to overcome. And she just was also able to overcome the uncertainty of whether or not she could even do something like this. And I was also kind of bummed that we were, done hiking.
I was the same way. Don't get me wrong, I was crazy excited to be back at the top, but I also wasn't looking forward to getting back to the real world. That's life, and we also love what we do, so we're pretty fortunate. If you don't have the opportunity to go down into the bottom of the Grand Canyon, that's okay. The view from the rim is still pretty dang amazing. So we spent our last morning catching sunrise from the rim.
Just stare out and wonder at the Grand Canyon, because it really is a Grand Canyon. I had two motives when planning this trip for the two of us. The first was just opening Mandy's eyes to what she's capable of doing when you set a goal that maybe doesn't seem achievable. And the second was, it was her birthday. What I value more than possessions is experiences, and I just really wanted to share an experience with her in the Grand Canyon. It's just a very special place to me.
There's a saying that goes, if your dreams don't scare you, then they aren't big enough. I didn't always know what that meant, but when you set a goal that actually has a possibility of failure, you start to understand what it means. When I didn't know if I was going to make it through this trip or not, it made our success at the end all the more wonderful. Because even the moments I didn't enjoy, I learned from, and they're experiences I'll never forget in my life. So if I had one piece of advice, it would be to do something that you don't know if you can do or not. Try something that scares you, because the worst that could happen is you'll fail and life will go on. So here's to dreaming big. Love and light. Hey.